Hello and welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm your host, Ed Charbeneau, and with me is my co-host, John Bristowe. We've got some tech news stuff to cover. I'm going to share some things that relate to something that I've been kind of dabbling with lately,
Okay.
and that is doing some GPTs, some large language models, and some RAG and all that good stuff. And I'm
Okay.
finding there's a lot of stuff out there, but not really well organized solutions for doing these type of things. It's all brand new, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of players in the space, but it's all bleeding edge beta test type stuff. I found this one interesting. This was shared a few minutes ago on my Twitter feed by Scott Hanselman. And this one's called gpt4all.
gpt4all.
So yeah, so you can dump a bunch of your own documents, create like a local drive, that type of thing, and put all your files in there that you would like this to search and vectorize. And then you can ask the chat bot questions about all of your data. And I think this is really cool stuff. So Hanselman, he's big into the diabetes research space.
Yep.
So he was processing some extremely large document that had, it was taking him all afternoon to process this document. It was like 600 something pages of a PDF. So he can scan it with this and ask questions rather than try to parse through all of that manually.
Yes.
So I thought that was pretty cool. And I don't have any specific plans for this, but I'm getting some interesting ideas
Yes.
that I'm going to try out. So we're kind of bouncing some things around here at Progress, as well as, just content ideas, because we have a lot of content on the website, and I was looking for solutions to do some of these type of things, and rolling something custom comes with a lot of paper cuts. I've been trying, we'll get to one of those. Introducing Microsoft.Extensions.AI Preview, a unified AI building block for .NET. Now, you might be asking yourself, isn't this what the semantic kernel does? Or the Azure AI NuGet package? So there's like a lot of ways to get to these things, and
well, the extensions right there, the name extensions in the title gives it away for me.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is like kind of like components for AI, I would imagine. Something.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways to attack this, and I think I saw Steve Sanderson sharing this. I don't know if he's directly involved with it or not, but if he is, that's probably a good sign. He's very talented at making APIs that have a good developer user experience. So hopefully he's on top of this as well. But I saw him sharing this, and I thought I would share it here on the show, and haven't touched it, so I don't quite understand all of the things that it does, but it helps kind of wrap things up, and it integrates with semantic kernels, so you can add both of these to your application. This, I believe, helps with a lot with the dependency injection pipeline that's in all your .NET apps already. So that helps bring the integration there, and it's got its own, or it's got a standardized middleware pipeline that you can plug things into. So hopefully this will help make sense of all of it. I was trying some of this out last week, and it's all in alpha. Like, it's not even really beta yet. The semantic kernel has a lot of moving pieces that are you have to put disable warnings basically to be able to use the code, because they don't want people deploying this stuff to production yet, because the APIs are in full swing and they might change from one release to the next. So yeah, I got quite a few paper cuts with this stuff this week. But it's all very interesting and fun to try to learn. Just beware that it is a moving target when you try to learn
Yes.
this stuff. And I think it's a bit of a learning curve for the folks that are building this stuff as well, because it's all brand new bits and pieces. So there be dragons.
Yes,
So
indeed.
the new AI building blocks preview is out if you'd like to give that a try. Are you trying any of these out, John?
No, not yet. But I am keen. I've just got too many things on the go at the moment. This is one of many things in the queue that I have to check out.
Yeah, I took a day the other day to just kind of see if I could implement any of these things in
Right.
some demos. And I was messing around with a blog post we highlighted last year that talked about how to implement RAG with .NET
Hmm.
using semantic kernel. And I got most of the way through it and found the breaking changes. And then when I kind of got to the final bits of it, I did get it working, but here's the catch. Like, you get to a certain point and it's integrating, what was it? SQLite to do the vector search with
Okay.
sending the data back to the the language model. So it was doing like a in-memory thing.
Okay.
And you get to a point where it breaks, and then when you start diving down the rabbit hole, you get to an issue on GitHub that says, yeah, we're not going to implement it this way. We're coming up with a new way to do memory in semantic kernel. If you
Okay.
want to write it yourself, you could do that, or you could wait until we decide how we're going to do this and release it. So I ended
All
up writing
right.
it myself. It's not typically where developers want to land on these issues, but
No.
that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's very edge of the curve type of thing. You
Okay.
really have to be into it to get over the hurdles. But I did. It was fun. I don't know if it's worth publishing on my GitHub, but I might share that. This GPT4all is the basically what I was trying to build anyway. So I'm probably going to head over here and check this out. It looked like it had a free way to use that, and it's all local and offline. So that's
Okay.
pretty cool stuff. If you do want to build some kind of
I
document
knew this was coming.
analysis type
I
of
knew
tool,
this was coming.
nice segue, right? And I just found this, like, the chat or the GPT4all, like, right before the show. It was perfect. We had a blog post on Telerik.com on our blogs by Peter Vogel that talks about doing this same idea as GPT4all, but using Telerik UI for Blazor
Right.
and the document processing libraries for .NET or for Telerik that are all C# based. So you can jump into Blazor and you can do this type of application right inside Blazor. You can full text search your documents and then ask the chatbot on how to answer those questions. So it's really interesting stuff. It's part of a little bit of a series that Peter's writing here. So if you have a chance, check it out.
All right.
And if you have, like Scott Hanselman, where he was talking about on his Twitter feed that on this GPT4all, why won't it share? There we go. On this GPT4all, he said he had this 600-page PDF file, and he forgot to check a box with GPU acceleration, and
Oh.
it was like running all night long. And then he came back and he was like, "Oh, I probably should have checked that box because this is taking way too long." So he checked the box, ran it again, and he said like it had already caught up with what he was doing
Oh, okay.
on the CPU and bypassed that in a very short period of time. So make sure you use your GPU with these things. Which reminded me to talk about our friend Chris Mars and a product that he's working on called GPU Droplets.
Hmm.
So this is a way of offloading this type of work to the cloud. And basically with DigitalOcean, you can spin up these GPUs online and have tasks running like doing the, vectorization of all of your data so it can be searched. So if you're building a RAG solution, you can just spin up these GPUs, and they're NVIDIA H100 GPUs in the cloud, 640 tensor cores, 128 ray tracing cores. And this is like high powered stuff. It's like dim the lights when you press the button type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Paul
there are a number
beer.
of AI providers out there. Like Cloudflare does this. They have their Workers AI, for example. All the major cloud providers have similar mechanisms like this. So they'll call them different things, but generally it's the same thing. It's like I want to have a GPU-based offload for performing work. I'm waiting for someone just to come out with a really cool name like the flux capacitor. I would love to see that as a code name for one of these things, because they
I think,
really are doing a lot of heavy lifting.
yeah, I think NPM's got us with that one already. Isn't there like some NPM flux capacitor? Maybe I'm just thinking of flux.
I think you might be thinking
The
of
flux
Flux.
pattern.
There is probably a package in npm called flux capacitor, I'm assuming. So,
Yeah,
but
we should bring back the game show NPM package or Urban Dictionary term. That was fun.
I like that.
That was
Yes.
really fun. I did that on Twitter for a little while, but it's really hard to come up with things that are safe for work.
Okay. So what was that?
But
npm package or what?
or Urban Dictionary term.
Oh, okay.
So you come up with a word, and it's one of the two, and
I
it's
like that.
very hard to figure out. It's
I like
actually
that.
really difficult.
I like that a lot.
Maybe we'll come up with a new one, like npm package or gen. Is it what's the new gen with all their? It's not Gen Z. It's what
Gen
maybe
Alpha.
it is Gen. Yeah, or Gen Alpha term, because they have all their whole language now.
Nice.
Anyhow, before I age myself anymore, um, let's move on to some DevTools stuff.
Yeah.
I caught this one. This actually sounds like something I think you might be interested in, John. You
Nice.
like these kind of things. You got
Sure.
kind of a niche for the command line tools.
Niche.
So Bloomberg has an open source initiative. So they release open source tools, and I saw this one being shared. It's a CLI framework for
Yeah.
TypeScript. So
Yeah.
you can create these CLIs with TypeScript,
Yes.
and it just looked pretty neat. It's simple, kind of low friction command line or not language, but framework for doing these things with Node.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how complex CLIs can get. So we rebuilt our CLI 2 years ago, and we decided to use Go for that for a number of reasons. Primarily, we wanted to get our binary sizes down, and given the tool chain associated with Go being C++, etc., we were able to get really, really small distributables. In addition to that, there were some great libraries around it, like we used Cobra. There are other frameworks like Charm, which are great. These frameworks aren't exclusive to Go. There's also frameworks for Python. There's frameworks for C Sharp, and then there's this one here, Stricli, which is for TypeScript. And you'd be surprised at all the stuff that you don't have to do when you integrate one of these frameworks. So there's like the hardest one is obviously parsing of the command line itself, because delimiters and spaces and all that sort of stuff. Flags, which is our common pattern. Environment variables, another common pattern. One thing that we did as well was we tried to provide, well, we implemented a interactive mode. So you can fire up, sometimes you can fire up command lines without any parameters, and you go into what's called an interactive mode. So typically when you run a CLI, you do so in the context of automation. You don't expect user input, but sometimes you do. And, I think of many historically very popular command line tools that utilize interactive mode. Yeoman comes to mind,
Yeah.
and all the other, like the React CLI, for example. But there are tons, right? Others you don't use them as interactively as you would expect, but interactive mode is another thing, and some of these frameworks provide that. And so Stricli, Charm, Cobra, There's a ton of other ones as well. These are great for building out a CLI.
I like that they highlighted the alternatives here. You could click, they got a list of all the alternatives that they looked at, and then, or they not just looked at, but they actually maintain a list in their documentation,
Yeah.
it looks like. And then they gave reasons to why they chose to build it. One of those things being type safety.
Okay.
So if you like strongly typed languages like they do, TypeScript's
Yeah.
going to give you that.
I can see the reasons why if that's your language of choice, but honestly, picking up a different language is not that hard. And if it comes down to it, I'm going to pick it based on function features like command line parsing, environment variable parsing, that sort of thing. But more importantly than that, and this is really where it becomes important, is like the binary itself that's generated. You want those executables, those packages that you generate for your CLI to be as small as possible. The reason
Yeah.
why is because typically what people will do is use them in the form of an automation. So you see this all the time. GitHub action runs or something like that. First thing you do, download the CLI. Second thing you do, run the CLI. So you want to have that as tight as possible. So getting those binaries down as far as you can is going to be really important, which is why we chose Go in part, because it's all based on our the C++ tooling that's out there. And the binaries are micro. They're like nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the idea here was to run it on Node, and I think Node is pretty universal, although it's
It is.
not always the fastest thing.
Nope.
Not at all. All right. Let's move on a little bit. 4.04 of Homebrew.
Yes.
What's going on with Homebrew, John?
Lots of stuff. So for those who don't know, Homebrew is a package manager for installing apps on Mac OS. It is using Git, specifically GitHub, as the sort of repository for the description of where these things come from. And 4.4.0, I guess, is now available. I've been using Homebrew since forever. And they've added support for things like Sequoia. They've done a bunch of features around things like tracing where casks come from. It's just an iterative sort of release on top of what's already there. The big change obviously came with 4, which was a long time ago. They did a lot of innovation there. But again, for those who are keeping track at home, brew install, brew update, away you go. 4.4 is pretty solid.
Nice. And we've got a Deno 2.0 out.
Yes. So Deno is a secure runtime environment for executing your JavaScript applications. It's an alternative to Node in this sense. Does have NPM compatibility, and 2.0, which has been under development for a while now, is now available. So great support here for things like TypeScript, built-in web standards. This is something that's been wanted for a while. Things like promises, fetch, etc. You'll see this listed all the time on the Node runtime pages as well. They also include a bunch of other things as well along for the ride. So a built-in formatter, a built-in linter, type checker, etc. But the big claim that Deno obviously makes all the time is secure by default. So this is something that a lot of developers care about. Yeah, I mean, for good reason. You want to make sure these runtime environments are super secure. And like I said, backwards compatible with Node and NPM. You can just take your applications, move them over. Other stuff that's listed there. But, if you're at all curious about, tweaking or utilizing something like Deno, it's definitely there for you to use.
I like that it's built on web standards. You probably hear me say that a lot. Like if it's web standard compatible, I'm for it.
Okay.
We went through this rough patch where like we had super non-web standard things like Flash and Silverlight, and that kind of left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And then we went on to make more non-web standard things. And a lot of these things came out of necessity, so I'm not trying to kick anybody while they're down. But we had
we
different
don't do that on this show.
100 different module patterns and JavaScript libraries come flying out every week. And then we kind of got off track again. And then people, I think, are starting, to swing the pendulum back to web standards because, basically the web standards are being implemented in the browsers now. So
Yeah.
they're staying up to date. We have the term evergreen browser for a reason now, and we see things like JavaScript modules and fetch and promises and all of that stuff being added to the browser that you can use reliably. You don't have to go off in 100 different substandards and implement all these things yourself.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, Deno isn't they're just providing hooks into the V8 runtime that they run on top of. I mean, Deno is, I mean, you could argue is secure because it's built on top of Rust, but it does use V8 under the covers. But yeah, I agree with you completely. Web standards for the win.
Speaking of web standards, gRPC over HTTP3.
Nice.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
So I think this is your article, isn't it, John?
No.
Oh, did I grab this one? I don't
did.
remember putting this on here. It might have
That's
been a
okay.
couple.
I got the
a few
gist of
weeks
it. I mean,
ago.
HTTP3 has got a lot of newness to it, specifically around performance and I guess for lack of a better term, multiplexing, being able to do a lot of transactions over a secure channel. Super important, especially in the context of gRPC, which is a binary protocol utilized that's web friendly. You can be able to use it over over the existing connection. This, of course, is based upon a protocol that's built into HTTP3. I think it's called QUIC. Okay, I'm going to really test myself. QUIC stands for Quick UDP Internet Connections, I think. And so it allows you to do these broadcasts. This is really going to be popular for folks who are building online games, for example, where you have to transmit things on broadcast. So it gives you that flexibility there. There's a lot of innovation that went to HTTP2 that allowed us to do these sort of, we've got a secure channel, just, blast away as many replies as you want rather than being singly threaded, waiting on something like via a JavaScript runtime request, for example. So HTTP2 with gRPC, that's pretty good. I mean, multiplexing on that perspective is fine. But HTTP3 kind of takes it to the next level with QUIC support.
Now I remember this. I didn't get all the way through it. The headline threw me off. I did read some of this, and what was interesting here is they were talking about the fact that the HTTP3 capabilities are out there, but very underutilized.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that was a big part of this, and this is actually well written. I need to go back and read the rest of it, but it's written with a little bit of humor as well, as you
Sure,
can tell with
sure.
all of the
I like it.
memes as you
Where's
go
my
through
bag?
this. But it brought to mind, I think the reason I tagged it for the show was that we just released an update to Fiddler that allows you to see in plain text the transmissions between gRPC and your server and your client.
Nice.
So that is something that
But that's been,
is not
I think
easy.
gRPC support's been there for a bit. I mean, I've been able to see binary traces on the wire for a while now, but I like anything that adds support for these new protocols, in my view, is good.
The support was there, but I think this allows you to view, like it's a binary protocol, but if you send a string over that's, a binary, package, but it's a string that's being sent over the wire, you can decode it and read it. If I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
that's something that we didn't have before.
All right.
So it's got a better viewer in it, from what I understand. So there's been some upgrades there to Telerik Fiddler, which is a Fiddler everywhere, which is an amazing product.
I use it. I love it. You should too.
Yeah, I was using it this week to debug some of my API calls that I was making off to Azure OpenAI, trying to figure out why it was broken. And we were talking about web and web standards and all the frameworks that belong in that space. I thought I'd highlight Catherine's post from our team. So all of the popular front-end frameworks these days, React, Angular, Blazor, all have some sort of client-side rendering, server-side rendering, and something in between.
Yep.
There's been a lot of different names for that. we got React server components, um, client side rendering, of course, server side rendering, and then I've seen what is it? Angular has the hydration feature, and Blazor has its automatic rendering mode. So these things are really hard to navigate. It's more something that's newer on the JavaScript side of things. We went like full on server side rendering for so long, and then we went all the way over to the other side of the pendulum with client side rendering and all the front end frameworks that kind of spawn out of that space. Angular 2 and up, and then React, and then we started to move back towards server side rendering for performance reasons in ASP.NET
Well,
forever.
I I would argue server side rendering is best for your SEO. So remember that
Yes.
when you're doing server side rendering, you get the full page at the end. So it allows you to provide that context to a search engine
Yeah.
crawler. Um,
Search engines
just
can pick that up much easier.
yeah. So just to let folks to level set with everyone. So server side rendering basically means that you get the page itself, and then the work is done on the client side, meaning in the browser to do updates and render, etc. Server side is where it's basically rendered ahead of time, and then the markup and CSS and JavaScript are served out after the fact. There is a connection there that you can maintain as well. And then the third thing that's mentioned in this article are the React server components, or RSCs. And this is where you're trying to provide sort of like we've kind of have the best of both worlds if you can,
Mhm.
and basically, implement your framework or your stack in that manner.
And then one thing I like about Catherine's writing is she puts a lot of her personality in it. It's
Okay,
much like our show here. Like we give it to you like from our perspective. She writes like this.
good.
So
What do you
you
want?
see stuff in here where she says what works well, what doesn't work well. And
Sure.
then with this is talking about client side rendering and what doesn't work well. Just talking about for anyone that's not in the ideal scenario. Let's see, where is it? And folks that never jumped on the fast internet bandwagon in the first place, folks in rural areas like me. Uh, it's just fun, fun to read her content. She's got her own voice here. Make sure you jump on blogs.telerik.com and check that post out. And then I think that's all we've got for today, John.
Nice.
Unless I missed any posts that you shared.
No, I think we covered it. Just your phrasing there made me kind of think of myself, like how old I'm getting these days. Like I like my internet the way I like my cars, dated and slow. So that's the way I test my products. So
Uh,
try and
I
try
have
and
some
try and use
jokes,
the
but
throttling.
this is
What's
a
that?
family friendly show. I can't tell my jokes here. The folks over at OpenAI have, if I can find the post, they they need to redo their
Is it
website.
the
It's
Canvas announcement?
Yes, I'm looking for Canvas. So
Yeah, it's on
if you
their
haven't
blog.
seen
It's the
that yet,
second link in their blog, I believe.
second link is this one? No, that's not
I'm
it.
seeing just the search page at
Hang
the
on,
moment.
let's search
Reboot
search for
your
it
computer,
directly.
Ed.
There we go.
There he
So
is.
this is something that they posted the other day, and I know some people
Yes.
have access to it. I don't. I don't have the. Is it still 20 a month? There's like a subscription to get.
Yeah, US. Yeah, so it's like
Yeah.
800 Aussie. So
So one of the things I found pretty interesting about this is that they're focusing a little bit more on coding than they
yes,
have in the past.
yes.
And I don't know if this is just me or if I'm just noticing this now or what, but you Chat GPT's always had some, capabilities to spit out code. Most of us knew that, I think. But they introduced this new editor and they talk a little tiny bit about how, this makes it easier for you to like write content, maybe a blog post or whatever it is you're writing. Maybe this is design notes up here, like your note taking. You can select the reading level and have it kind of rephrase the document. But then, that's about it. It doesn't talk too much more about, this whole writing aspect of it, and it starts diving into coding. So we talked about this like 2 or 3 weeks ago that they released a new model for ChatGPT, and it's the O4 model, and it is, or sorry, 4.0, not O4.
Yes.
The 4.0 model, and it is um, it's more inclined for coding, research, science, scientific research, that type of thing that requires a bit more cycles pr- to get an accurate answer and hallucinate less. They're
Okay.
calling it reasoning, but it's like reasoning light. Like it's where you can get this chain of thought from it, where it's gone through different iterations and kind of picked the best outcome from those iterations. So it does this on its own behind the scenes, and they're touting it as being better at coding, and they've released a lot of features in this canvas that talk about coding. So you could do the code generation. You can see here in their little demo reel that's playing. You've got line numbers now. You've got some syntax highlighting, and then you can highlight and do work with the editor on a specific line or function. And then it has things like fix bugs, which I found interesting.
Okay.
And you can also uh, add logging capabilities. So this is probably just like basic stuff like console write lines and whatnot. Um, Again, this is in preview that I don't have access to, so I wasn't able to try this. But just reading through the thoughts here, I'm wondering where they're going with this. Do you have any kind of takes on what you think they might be doing here? Do you think this
Well,
is going to become an IDE?
uh, I don't know. I mean, I think they're trying to provide a general purpose environment for generative work, creative work.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I would have to ask. Like, they didn't lead with code, right? So that leads me to believe. Sorry, I'm using the same term there. I suspect they're watching very closely on what people are actually using on the creative side for generative stuff. Now, everyone and their dog is using it to create stupid images. That's a given.
Yeah,
But creative content of this nature, I think it's blog posts, prose, student essays, cheat. I want to cheat on my homework, things like that. But coding is definitely up there, and I think it's because they're watching very closely what's happening on the generative side. This is just a
yeah,
natural evolution of it. I think, though, unfortunately, there is a little bit of a backlash going on with generative AI around coding.
there is.
It is
Yeah,
still, yeah, it's still introducing bugs. I mean, there are massive bugs in some of the code that's being generated. I mean, so you gotta be careful because it's obviously being seeded by by locations that have, edge cases that aren't covered, for example. And this is well documented. But I think it's meant. I don't think an ID is on the cards here. I think it's going to be more general purpose sort of thing. They're providing that environment. They're obviously trying to do lock in as well. I mean, OpenAI needs some kind of front end facing client environment that they can kind of lock people in. So that's, I think, their
yeah.
attempt there.
I just know the way developers are. I see something like this, and it's like, okay, this, I can generate code here, but that means I have to copy and paste this out into an environment to run it in. And
Yes.
then when I run into a problem there through my, compiler, debugger, linter, etc., now I have to rely on either myself or another tool to help me fix it. And or I can paste it back in, and then you have this back and forth. Like I'm copying it out of here, I'm pasting it in there. I need to fix it over here, and that's not the workflow that any of us like.
All right.
So I'm kind of like wondering where this will go next if coding is a focus. Are we going to be able to run code from here? Is it going to turn into a REPL? Like, where does it evolve to? So, is is it watching Copilot and following in its footsteps? There's some really nice features to Copilot that I've been finding useful, and be really interesting to see what this does. But yeah, I do see the backlash with the tools. I don't think they've been given a fair shake yet. It's so very early to be like, yeah, this isn't something I'm ever going to use. But I could see both sides of it where yeah, it does generate not really so much bugs that I've noticed, but maybe code that doesn't apply to what you're trying to do. One of the things like Chris and I were working on something last week, um, despite Visual Studio not working because reasons. Copilot was suggesting we were using like user secrets or something, and it kept trying to do environment variables code, and it was like, okay, we get that's a thing, but stop automatically adding it everywhere we type code, like it's getting annoying. So there's stuff like that that it does, and you could kind of tweak dials to turn some of these things on and off. But then you find a feature like the one I like, which is the automatic generation of commit messages. I hate writing commit messages.
Sure.
I get, off on a tangent. I'm like, this is shiny squirrel, whatever. And I've, touched a couple different files. And then I go back to write the commit message. And I was like, oh, yeah, where did I begin? I don't know if you've ever seen the show Malcolm in the Middle and you're familiar with
Yes.
like the junk drawer scene or the light
Yes.
bulb or whatever it was.
Yeah,
He's
the
like,
yak shaving
got to
scene.
fix the
Yeah,
light
he's yak
bulb.
shaving. Yes.
Yeah. That's me coding. So, me keeping up with my commit messages is a big task. It's a lot of cognitive overhead. So if I can just work and then hit a button, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, this is all the stuff you did. And then it even like today, it gave me the reason I actually did it. And I was like, yeah, I didn't even think but I did actually refactor all of that stuff. And that's what I was doing. But I wouldn't have worded it that way. It's like, that's actually really accurate. Like it was a refactoring
Yes.
situation. So love that feature. Like keep that, maybe nix a couple of these other things, but the tooling, it will shape up, I think, and it's going to be something that a lot of people are going to want to use.
You heard it here first.
I'm sure this isn't the first, but I'll I'll take the compliment, I guess, if that's what it is. Take care.
All right.